Greetings and welcome to In-Depth. I'm Dike Rostant. We are looking at curbing, mitigating crime in Trinidad and Tobago, and we're trying to enlarge that conversation, shifting the focus away from arm the services with directives to stop crime and looking at the role of individuals and communities. Now, to do that, we are joined by Director of Crime Stoppers Trinidad and Tobago, Darrin Carmichael. Welcome, Mr. Carmichael. Thank you so much for making the time, and I'm very happy to have this conversation looking at getting past just external forces. And with that in mind, talk to me a little bit about the mental processes of moving the conversation from what they're supposed to do to what I can do.
Well, thank you for having me, DK. It's always good to share and certainly involve the community in the effort, the whole effort to fight crime. Over the years, we have tried to instill in communities that they have a role to play. Every single resident of a community has an integral role to play in their own effort to help reduce crime within their community. It really starts with the home. And when we have meetings, we focus really on what can I do in and around my home to one, make myself less of a target, two, fix those things and remove those things that may attract the criminal element to my home in particular. What can I do to enhance the lighting, the aesthetics, and the things that may be encouraging the crime? Now, a lot of people spend years, they say sometimes a mortgage is a 15-year process. Some people spend years building the home, building value, property value, and so on, and making it look presentable. When I meet with you for an hour, 45 minutes, I really spend that time telling you how to make your home unattractive, how to make your home not unattractive to the prospective buyer or so, but unattractive to the criminal element, simply because we understand that the criminals look for those soft, easy targets. And that is where we focus on to build that level of awareness and to make persons harden, so to speak, that home, that environment, so it becomes that much more difficult for the crime and the criminal to succeed.
And I'm gratefully framing it like that because sometimes I feel the need to ask someone to advocate a message, to talk to the individual about personal responsibility, but sometimes you kind of walk a fine line in terms of saying what is an individual's responsibility without crossing over to say, okay, well, we're victim blaming or we're victim shaming. Yeah. So I really like that that analogy of making your house unattractive. And but you spoke about things responsible for crime. Can you just break that down for me a little more?
Yeah, well, in terms of the crime, in my view, follows the path of least resistance. The criminals like to go after things that are, the chances of being caught is low, and of course, the chances of escaping and getting away with it is high. So wherever communities come together, crime goes down. In all my years, and this is 23 plus years of doing this, wherever neighborhood watch groups have been established, the crime automatically goes down within those communities. And the reality is that neighborhood watch groups, and if you don't mind, I can just go into some crime reduction things that we do.
Please go ahead.
When neighborhood watch groups are formed, because of the target hardening, because we are telling communities to look at your doors, your locks, your windows, your lighting, your shrubbery, the things that you leave outside and expose, what that does, that limits the opportunity for the criminal to see something to want to go after it. Secondly, it makes like I said, the home unattractive to them. In their minds, they will say, better pickings next door. Let me go somewhere that doesn't have an alarm system, that doesn't have lights on at night, that doesn't present a formidable threat to me as a bandit, because they see it as a hard target. The visible surveillance that communities are asked to do, in other words, we ask communities to look out to be eyes and ears of the law enforcement. That simply means that every household, once they're on board, they use every opportunity to identify suspicious persons, suspicious vehicles, suspicious activity. And they're not only identifying it, but we also ask them to report it, to share it. And we can talk later about the WhatsApp chat groups and the various means by which we share that type of information in real time, right? So that visible surveillance that takes place within and among residents allow them, all of them, to come together to identify these vehicles and so on. And once it's reported, you find that the police will now have a targeted search, and they know exactly where to come, exactly where to go to identify these persons.
But I hear you moving, Mr. Carmichael,
sorry?
I hear you moving from individuals to communities, and you're doing that in a free-flowing sort of manner. But how do we mobilize from that personal responsibility to establishing community groupings?
Okay, great. So the scope of Neighborhood Watch is first and foremost, look at yourself, your space, what you can do. And then we have this group meeting. So somebody who is law-abiding and interested in starting a group will come. They'll make contact with us either through the Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Industry and Commerce. So under the Crime and Justice Committee, we mobilize the Neighborhood Watch groups as a secretariat there. We also do something similar via the Crime Stopper website, crimestoppertt.com. Now, whichever method you get in touch with us, we are able to come into your communities. And of course, with COVID relaxing and so on, we can now go back out. So we go into the communities that are interested. We have a meeting most of the times is afternoon, evening times when people get home from work. Whether it's under a house, whether it's in a center, wherever we get to meet, we find the time. And we, at that point in time, bring home to them things they can do to reduce themselves from becoming targeted by criminals, things that they can do in and around the home, things that they can do in and around the community. We offer self-defense, what we call self-protection training as well within all of that time. We talk about the tenets of setting up and establishing and maintaining Neighborhood Watch. Neighborhood Watch is neighbor looking out for neighbor. And that's where the community comes in, where everyone is on board. There's a structured program, there are street captains, persons have responsibilities, and of course, as a partner in the Neighborhood Watch program, the police is also invited to those meetings to say and outline what is the police role in the Neighborhood Watch group.
And with that, no, you raise a point, and I want to get back to it, because at a point in time, I thought it was just, okay, well, we have a group of people coming together, and we're saying we have a Neighborhood Watch because we're in the neighborhood and we're watching out. But it seems as though there is overarching, there's an umbrella body that it seems a lot more regulated than I thought it was at first. But
well, well, over time, of course, if you want something to be done correct, you have structure. So the structure has been in place upwards of 25 years now. And again, it was formed under the auspices of the TNT Chamber, and it's been maintained under the Crime and Justice program since then. So we have, there's a body and of course Crime Stoppers that bring the sort of backbone and strength to it, all right? As one of the persons who would be the sort of like the self-appointed coordinator of the national, I'm giving it names now, the National Neighborhood Program, because we are truly national, we are all over, spread across Trinidad and Tobago, all right? So that body now helps support and so on, such that we have those, like, I don't know if you'll see it clearly, but we have signage that as well goes up, right? And the signage, it basically identifies those communities that are on board, that have gone through the program, that has gone through the training and so on. So there are a lot of trained individuals out there who do just one thing. They become the eyes and ears of law enforcement. And that is where the strength of this program really lies. It is a grassroots solution to crime fighting in terms of helping to reduce crime by taking away the exposure, by taking away the risk, by taking away the vulnerability, by building resilience among these communities. That's what our aim is, and I'm saying that is what we've been successful over the years to do.
And from sometimes you get the biggest effects starting from the smallest foundations.
Oh, that's
but
right.
we continue this conversation when we return. Stay with us. We are speaking with Darrin Carmichael about personal responsibility, neighborhood responsibility for mitigating crime. We return with more. Welcome back. We're looking at personal and the community responsibility for dealing with crime. We're speaking with Darrin Carmichael, a director at Crime Stoppers TNG. Now, one of the things that you just said in terms of having a community go through a series of capacity building to deal with crime, it feels almost as though you were talking about hardening an area or a situation for it to become a little less appealing to criminals. Is it a matter of saying, and through your experience, what kind of areas are the ones that say they put their hand up and say, okay, well, I want to have a neighborhood crime watch in my area? Are some more successful than others? And what are some of those factors that go into having a successful neighborhood crime watch in an area or a community, Mr. Carmichael?
Well, to tell you, we would run something like 3 to 4 meetings per week. And if we had more resources, we'd probably do more. So there are a lot of people coming out and like you said, putting their hands up. But the reality is that the persons who want to come on board, unfortunately, there's a delay. They actually wait until somebody has been a victim. There has been either a profound increase in crime within the area. Something happened and it came close to home, some of them. So what we're realizing is that persons wait and wait and wait only until something gets really out of hand or close to home, as the saying goes, before they come on board. But we are able to have these meetings proactively. We do not need to wait until something happens. As far as the type of communities, wherever they are law-abiding citizens, all right? Because of course, there are some areas where sometimes the crime has taken such deep roots that persons don't feel comfortable, trying to have a meeting in their area. In fact, we've done some meetings where persons would have come outside of their area to host the meetings with whomever they had on hand that are willing to be on board with them. So they are sort of I don't know, clandestine might be a good word to call it, but there's some low flying sort of under the radar neighborhood watch groups that exist in some communities and are very, very successful because what they do is they look after themselves. They look after those persons who are on board with them to come on and at least bring this to become a reality. So that's where we are. And of course, I want to, just stick a pin in here that a lot of what we do and have been doing is ably supported by the TTPS. All right, we would be nowhere unless we had that kind of support from the police service, from the community-oriented policing sections, and from a number of other stakeholders who all come on board to make this thing a reality.
And how do we make some of those formal connections between neighborhood crime watcher in program or project and those arms of the TTPS that you would have just outlined in terms of community policing and possibly some others? What are some of those incremental steps to make those connections, especially if you have a group that you're now forming? What do they look out for? How do they reach out?
Well, it goes both ways. The police know that we are like sort of the subject matter experts. So a lot of the police divisions and persons, they contact us when there is a community that is desirous of setting up a watch group, okay? So we would accompany the police into those meetings and have that type of meeting going on. In fact, one was canceled today because of inclement weather, all the way down in Carolina, I believe it was in Central. So the reality is that they reach out to us and say, listen, we want to have a meeting. You're invited to come and do what you do kind of thing. And we do that. Sometimes it is at the behest of the actual communities themselves because they reach out to us through the various media that we're on the Crime Stopper website, we're on the Chamber's website, the Crime and Justice Committee. So there's a lot of ways, and of course word of mouth. A lot of the times, within every district within Trinidad and Tobago, there is a vibrant neighborhood watch group. Sometimes people see the sign and make inquiries within those communities. Listen, you all have a neighborhood watch? How can I get one in my community? We always encourage that when there's a meeting in a particular community, we ask that community to invite a few members of neighboring communities. So 1 or 2 representatives will come from neighboring communities, sit in that meeting, and they say, listen, come by me next, come by me next. And that's how it goes. So it's a continuum. And what I can say is that, and you've heard about the air horn. So the air horns as well has become very popular in these communities because it's a way of raising an alert, raising an alarm to a potential crime situation within the community. So once people, the word is out, and I want to say this as well, that the word is also out among the criminal elements as well. They know that wherever those neighborhoods, what signs are present, wherever those persons come on board, it's a community that is alive and well, that is looking out for criminal activity, and not only looking out for it, they're reporting it. So many a times vehicles simply idle, whether it's lovers spending a couple of minutes before going in, whether it's somebody who's actually taken out or doing surveillance. Once they spend undue time within a community looking or acting suspiciously, the police often shows up and pat them down, try to find out what they're doing and so on. And that kind of thing is taboo. That word spreads, and even the criminals know that there are certain communities that they're not going to go into. All right, and that's really the value of the program.
Mr. Carmichael, we have about 2 minutes. It sounds as though you may be a part of a great deal of WhatsApp groups and conversations. How do you filter out frivolous calls, frivolous messages? And also inside that 2 minutes, where does Crime Stoppers really continue to play a role?
Well, you made a good guess there. As of today, we somewhere close to 802 emergency chat groups. And that's just me alone. A lot of the police in different districts have 20, 40, 60, depending on how many groups within their own area. The police also want to be part of the chat. And we're on the chat really because we become the first responders. We look at things that are on the chat. The police look at vehicle numbers, suspicious activity. If you're a vibrant police officer, really engaged on crime fighting, you want to be on an active neighborhood watch chat group. And what they do is they filter out the spam. There's no good morning and thank yous and flowers and memes. It is strictly designed for persons to share emergency type information and emergency type response activity that follows. Okay, so there's a serious discipline that takes place among those things. And what we also do with the communities very quickly is we also encourage them to do their part in identifying the activity and reporting it, which is another key thing the police look for. Okay, so what we have is vibrant persons within communities who contribute meaningfully to crime fighting. They also contribute by way of camera systems. So persons with camera systems and street cameras form a network so the police can identify where the vehicle passed, where it went to, where it is at present. And that kind of network and real-time information sharing is what is really, really critical to the police in their crime fighting efforts. In fact, community engagement is one of the police strategies in terms of their way of reducing crime. So it's a real thing. I would encourage persons in the last couple of seconds I may have to find out if there's a neighborhood watch program in and around you. My telephone number is 312-2281, 312-2281. You can contact me directly, or you can contact us through the Crime and Justice Committee at the TNT Chamber or crimestopperstt.com and make inquiries. And let's come into your community. Let us do our part to help the police reduce the crime within this country. It can be done. It is possible.
We want to thank you so much, Darrin Carmichael, Director at Crime Stoppers, looking at how we can take a little more personal ownership in regard to our safety. And hopefully we have another conversation in due course. And also thanking you on behalf of the entire news team. I'm Dike Rostant. This has been In Depth with me. Thank you so much for joining us.